I'd like to call to order the Lake Lore Town Council, January 31st, 2017. And I'd like everybody to rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance.
Father, we thank you so much for this beautiful day you've given us. We pray your hand of blessing on this meeting, that you would give us all eyes to see, ears to hear, and hearts of understanding, as well as the wisdom that we need to care for the business of the town. Pray in Christ's name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, John. Okay, item number 2 is to adopt the agenda.
I'll make the motion, we adopt it as printed, the revised copy
Of the,
of the agenda with the eight items on it.
okay. Okay, motion made by Bob to adopt the agenda with the revised, I think it's proclamation. Do I hear a
I'll
second?
second it.
Second by Mary Ann. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous? Aye. Okay, sorry. Town Manager Communications. Ron?
Thank you, Mayor. The board had asked that I just give a quick update on the Duke Energy Charging Station Grant. As you know, you requested that Shannon contact the Rutherford County Tourism Development Authority, TDA, see if they'd be interested in helping to participate in that cost. A big thanks to them, of course, and to Shannon. They did agree to participate. So we can now move forward, I understand, with submitting the grant paperwork and moving forward with that project.
Okay, any questions for that? I think that's in pretty good shape. It worked out to our favor. You want to say something more while Andy's trying to get the system going?
Well, I understood that, of course, we had the $5,000 grant, if that's correct, and the TDA agreed to supply 2,500 more. Is that going to be enough? Are we sure it's going to be enough?
Yes.
Okay.
Our local electrician says yes.
Yep.
And you wonder why they call him Sparky.
I got a comment, but I won't say. That's right. That's right.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, as Bob, Commissioner Cameron mentioned last meeting, that his company was willing to basically perform the installation, is basically the town buys the supplies necessary to cover the cost of supplies, and Mr. Cameron's company would basically provide the labor and do the install. So that's a cost reduction right there. The 2-port unit that we're going to order is a little over $5,000. I think it's $5,900, and we've asked for another $2,500 from the TDA to cover materials. So we're going to be in good shape on this one. So.
I'm going to go ahead and say this. Last year, when Mayor Keith and I and Commissioner Sylvie went through the training there in Asheville, one of the situations that was brought out under the ethical things was where a commissioner had offered to do work for a town but not charge. And so I would like to suggest that you check with the School of Government, our town manager do that, to make sure that there's nothing wrong. It appears nice on the surface, but to make sure there's nothing ethically wrong with him doing that work for free of charge, and so on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Freezing issue.
Do we know, just let me interrupt and just, is William Morgan going to be here?
Yes.
He will be here, okay. All right, well, let's,
He's gonna be about 15 minutes late.
okay, well, this presentation will give him time to get here. Okay, thank you, Jenny.
It keeps losing connection.
Huh.
It won't play on the.
Would it be worth jumping down to item number 6 and just discussing that and getting that one out of the way
Sure.
while we're waiting for the technology?
That's fine with me.
Is that okay?
Right, yes.
Why don't we do that? And this item number 6 is the sewer manhole inspection services agreement from Brown Consultants and Byron Environmental. Basically, at our last meeting, we decided to defer action on this to see if there was a way of reducing the expenses by the use of some of our local talent. And I think, Bob, you looked into it, and maybe Ron?
Ron did. Basically, what we did is we asked him to go back and review the price, and by doing so, we were able to save about $4,000. And so we've gone back and rewritten the contract with those changes on it. And now the contract, instead of 18,000 plus, is 14,001. So nice cost savings. So we'll basically what we're going to do is that the engineers, there'll be a team, including town staff, go out and review all the manhole connections throughout the lake, write up any bad connections, illegal connections, breaks, and that kind of thing, issue the report, and then it'll be up from there for us and town staff to make those repairs or enforce those items.
I do have a question. As I read their agreement, it talked about the manhole connections, and I don't remember the exact verbiage of lateral lines that are in the lake. And I wanted to clarify what that means, because there is one that appeared the last time the lake was down. When the lake came up, it was several hundred feet from a house to the manhole of just white line.
PVC pipe.
And when the water came up, it was floating on the surface. And I called the town manager at that time, and he said, well, he thought it was floating because it wasn't being used, and it was not filled up, and that it would sink. But I have concern about that, and I would like, while the engineers are here, that they be sure to look for situations like that.
Okay.
It's just lying on the lake bottom now in front of seawalls, and I'm not sure why it was put in the lake, but it was put in there new 2 years ago. And I'll talk with you about it more, but things like that I hope they will look at.
That's exactly what they're supposed to do. If it was 2 years ago, it was illegal because it's supposed to have been ductile pipe at that time. So that's exactly what we're trying to catch right there.
And this is going to be completed before the water comes up
Right.
March 1.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
earlier
writing
this,
it, oh, I'm
go ahead.
sorry. It's just writing up all these locations, reports. A lot of the repairs won't be made, but they'll be on a list to be enforced and corrected.
Okay, but they can't be corrected after the water's up.
Some,
my-
maybe, some not.
I shared my concern with Ron earlier this week, and I guess it was yesterday. And I think some work has been begun already, but is that, rather than wait to the end of the 11-day period, is that any exposures we have, if we can get going on that, so we can get as much work done before the water comes up, trying to prioritize those issues that look pretty severe and so forth, so. And I've been assured that that would,
That's our intent, yes.
that's,
Now,
okay.
now,
That's not assurance, intent. Okay,
one of the people bidding on this contract is Don Byers, who runs our wastewater treatment facility, correct? So he's a contract employee?
Yes.
He has a small part in it.
But again, is there any conflict there
No, he is
with the
He
school
is
government?
actual contract labor, so
Okay,
we can contract with him on a number of items.
okay.
okay, with that, all that being said, would somebody make a motion?
I'll make the motion that we accept both the Brown and Byers contracts as written.
Okay,
And then there's a second part
there's
to
a
the
second
motion.
part of that,
Okay, I'm sorry.
right down the bottom.
Okay.
Okay.
To approve the proposal for services with Brown Consultants and Byers Environmental, amount not to exceed $14,125, and to approve the transfer of $14,125 from the Water and Sewer Fund retained earnings to the 53-714-000-691 contractual service line item.
Okay.
Motion made by Bob. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Mary Ann. Any further discussion?
One thing, and I'm sure Commissioner Cameron meant, on the first part, you meant 15 or 14, but you spoke and said 15.
I did.
So for clarification, we're
14,125.
talking 14,125.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay, with that change in the motion, do I hear a second? Second by Mary Ann. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Okay, I think we're ready for the CIP presentation.
Took care of you.
Well, I apologize. I was supposed to do this at the last meeting and was sick. I don't get sick often, but this one knocked me on my can, so had the flu, and so I was unable to do this at the last meeting. And again, I apologize to the board. I wanted to take a few minutes, talk about the Lake Lure Capital Improvement Program, or plan, as you'll hear me call it, from fiscal years 2017 to 2022. Find the magic space here. I'll make this work. All right. So what is a capital improvement plan or a capital improvement program? It's a flexible financial planning tool, and that's what's important. Just remember flexible, because you have a lot of say-so. It's one of the most important things that this board's getting ready to do, is begin into their budget process. And part of that is the CIP. So the CIP plays right into the budget process, and then sets the goals and objectives for the next year for the Board of Commissioners. So it looks into the future to forecast our equipment, building, and infrastructure needs. And it not only looks at expenditures, but it's not a wish list, but it also looks at revenues. How are we going to pay for that? Yeah. So what do we include in a CIP? Back up. Anyway, let me just tell you, since I don't know how to back it up. It's anything over $5,000 and underlined has a life expectancy greater than a year. So most of the things that you'll see are big capital project items like your buildings, your dump trucks, your police cars. We talk about water and sewer lines. We'll talk about fire trucks. I'm afraid to hit the button again. There we go. We talk about the generators down at the dam. We also talk about the golf course and the projects down there. So again, as you can see, it encompasses a whole lot of capital projects or projects that the town does over the next year, 5 years. How do we prioritize those? The most important is those that address the health or safety issue. That's probably top. And a good example of that is the dam study that needs to be completed. It's required by the state. We need to have it in place. It was due in 2015, so we're roughly a year behind, so we've got to get that one done. That would receive the top sort of #1 position in a CIP. Second is it's mandated. Third is it replaces an existing item, so like a truck for a truck. Fourth, if it's an expansion item. And what that means is it's a new project or new initiative that the board wants to complete. Now, I'll tell you, I took some heat from the department heads, including Montreat's information in here. But because we do not have really a formal CIP process, what I've done is I've copied these project summary forms and put them in here just so you can see what you're gonna get here in the next few months. So what you'll see is each department roughly has about 10 or 12 projects, it seems like. You'll get the description, a justification, and roughly how much it's going to cost. In this case, Montreat decided they were going to spend a lot of money on street paving, roughly about $2 million over the next 5 years. And so this just set aside that money for street paving projects. As I said, we don't just look at expenditures, we look at revenues as well. So you'll see that we talk about design, we talk about engineering, right-of-way. We put those costs into a format for you, into a chart, and then we talk about those revenue sources as well. And so you'll see that you'll have current revenue, which is tax money basically. You might talk about bonds, you might talk about grants, or you might talk about lease purchase projects. All of that information is then plugged into a larger spreadsheet. And in that spreadsheet, you'll see that in the Public Works Department for Montreat, they had over $3.6 million worth of projects. So all the projects in Lake Lure will now be put into a funding category by department, and you'll see what those total projects cost for that department. Take it one step further, you then combine each department into a master spreadsheet, and that spreadsheet will show you overall throughout the town what our capital expenditures are. And you'll see several examples here, building a new town hall, police vehicle replacements, public works facility, some of those same costs. You'll get all the way to the bottom and you'll see that Montreat over that 5-year period was looking at close to $6.8 million worth of projects. So the important thing here is to not only look at expenditures, but then how are we gonna pay for some of those projects? And you'll see most of that was scheduled to come out of operating revenues. So that means, they would possibly have to look at tax increases or grants or something else to fund those things. So you'll see that breakdown at the bottom. So then what we'll do in Lake Lure is really similar. We'll take all of those projects, we'll summarize those for you and put them down here in the form so that you can then make some critical funding decisions about what you want to do. You'll also see the revenues broken down. Historically, they spend about 45% on capital. Their debt service, you'll see that, and we will list those also again, revenues and expenditures. So the next steps for us, we will review projects, which I'm doing now. We'll establish priorities. I will recommend some priorities for you. You do not have to, of course, accept those priorities. You can move projects around as you see fit. We consider revenue and expenditure impacts, and then that draft CIP was scheduled to come to you in February. Because we're getting a late start here, it may be a special meeting or in March before I get the final one to you. You'll then ask the public what they think about it. They'll get a chance to weigh in. They'll hold a public hearing in March, and then we were hoping to adopt the CIP in March or April. So we always encourage y'all's input, the public's input, and value their opinions. And so if you have any questions, again, just a real brief summary of sort of where we're heading in the next 60 days.
Are there any questions?
Well, I think previously the equipment for the golf course was not included in any kind of CIP. Are you planning on including that?
I've read over the agreement. It looks like some capital projects or considerations are the towns, and some are not. And so what we'll do is we'll go back to that agreement and sort of look for guidance. But my thought is there are some things that he's turning on that are certainly the town's responsibility.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, Ron.
Mr. Mayor, I want to say that I applaud this effort. I've not seen anything in the way of a CIP of this magnitude, even when I ran for office in 2013 and other years that I've been sitting in on budget hearings or budget meetings, and I applaud this effort. And I think that's really the direction we need to go for long-term financial planning. So,
Very good. Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Okay, going back to item number 5, Lake Lure Classical Academy Master Site Plan. Would someone like to come forward? Eric, are you gonna be the spokesman, or Tom, or? We'll tag team. Or are you, well, okay, well, we get Shannon.
first victim.
We're sending in the bull. That's right.
That's only half a word.
First victim.
Gary Hoffman in the audience. I'm gonna try to give a little background, Mr. Mayor, and then I think the Lake Lure Classical Academy representatives are gonna come and go over the actual master plan, for the board and the audience. Just a few things. What you have in your packet is the actual master plan, master site plan itself. You have a report from staff where we have reviewed this over the last month and a half. We had a DRC review. We also had a planning board review. And so now the planning board is sending this to you and recommending that you approve it as submitted. In your packet, you have a resolution. That resolution references an improvements agreement. And then also in your packet, you have a certificate of occupancy. So those are the 3 documents we'll be asking you to consider approving today. And if approved, then we will try to have those 3 documents signed today. One of the most critical is the certificate of occupancy for the school, as they are hoping to secure that today so they can move forward with securing financing so they can really begin implementation of this 10-year plan. One of the most critical pieces is the gym auditorium piece. We approved the master plan for the school back in 2012, I believe it was. My memory's right, 14. And so there were some conditions that the board and the planning board worked on and the school agreed to as part of that resolution that was passed. One of the items that has not been completed to date, that is the portico, which was to be located in front of the school, that was to have a Mediterranean design to it, simply was to serve students in inclement weather. The school at that time, I think they made it clear, if we have the money left over, that's something we feel like we can do. Since that time, they have basically felt like that what they have is sufficient. Funds are tight, and so basically they're asking that the portico basically be removed from the approval for the master site plan. One of the other items in the master site plan that was approved initially was the gym and the auditorium. The gym and the auditorium was never constructed, and so that was also part of the approval, that they were supposed to construct the gym and the auditorium. So they're ready to move forward with that piece, but we've got to get the CO in place before they can actually, for what they've done to date, before they can move into the next phases. So we're not giving them a CO, wouldn't be giving them a CO for something they haven't constructed. It's only for what they have constructed. So the improvements that are on site, in the ground right now, is what would be giving them a CO for. One of the things that's different about this process is that before, this is in the GU zoning district, and council sets the development criteria per the zoning regulations. And what you decide, whatever standards are set, is what has to be complied with. And those are spelled out in these resolutions, one that we've passed, one that we're considering today. One of the conditions in that initial resolution was that the firing range be transferred to the school, and that it be mitigated or remediated. And it basically be cleaned up and reused. I can tell you I've been here since 2004, and I've been here since the school was talked about here when land was initially looked at and investigated for the school, even before it became a formal process. And the firing range area was an area that the school had given consideration to very early. And as we went through the whole general development plan process, we were asking for information from the school as to where to locate buildings. We were gathering information for a new library site, information for perhaps a new YMCA, as all these things were mentioned in our comp plan. And we also realized that we had the old landfill site that was in need of remediation. The firing range was active as well. We began to piece all these items together, and we began to look at the cost of remediation. The state picked up the cost for the landfill 100%. It was a brand new grant program that came online. Lake Lure was the first to apply, and we secured the grant, and so the old landfill site has been remediated. And so it has restrictions on it, what you can do there, but it has been cleaned up according to state standards. The firing range is one of those items that, as long as we continue to use the firing range, we can use the firing range, and there's no mandates that it be cleaned up. So that area is one area that we want to discuss today, and basically in your packet was a resolution and improvements agreement, and those two items basically spell out that land would be transferred to the school. School would apply for brownfields cleanup funds, and the resolution basically says town will help cover the cost on the application, and also maybe any additional cost that's not covered by the grant. The school kind of came back and they said, well, have a few concerns about that, and so they listed those, and let me hand that out to you. And then so in response, working with our town attorney, we changed the language in the improvements agreement. That's section 6. And so I'm going to give you the amended improvements agreement and also a sheet that has both the new language, the old language of the improvements agreement, and then the school's request at the end. So I'm going to hand those out right now.
While you're doing that, Ron, have we gotten any new prices on the removal? I noticed you'd made that comment, and you're going to check on a couple more prices. Have any of those come in yet?
No, we had talked about actually bidding the project out to see what kind of prices we would get. We have not done that, just based on the conversations that was going on with the school at the time. That grant cycle will be coming back around, and we'll be picking that up again here soon, probably.
Because that is one of my concerns, is that third dot there. The town agrees to indemnify LLCA against cost of remediation greater than what grants will cover. My only issue there is that could be $100,000 or $200,000 cost to the town and our taxpayers. I mean, any contract, you don't leave the door open for, they may not qualify for a grant, or they may not get a grant. Is there a date certain that this has to be set by? And the others is, we're holding the town responsible for an open checkbook past wherever the grant is. So if it's $250,000 cost, you get a $100,000 grant.
Well, I would just point out one thing. We're responsible for that cost anyway. It's the town's responsibility to remediate the firing range. If we're continuously using it, it's no problem at all. When we stop using it, that's when we could have an issue. And the grant will cover $200,000, and so the thought is that, of course, we would be responsible. Now, we cannot apply for the grant ourselves.
Exactly. That's why they have to own it, and that's my understanding.
Right.
But are we sure that they're going to get a $200,000 grant?
Well, there's no guarantee.
Right. And so that's what my concern is that $200,000 doesn't come through, then the town's responsible for, say they get half of it, $150,000. So I've just got a concern about leaving an open-end account that the town and our taxpayers are going to be responsible for.
Well, as I understand it, there is an open-ended account that we can't apply for a grant to get help with.
I agree, I
By
understand.
transferring it and by their accepting it, they can apply for grants, and we're saying, okay, we'll pay what you can't get the grants for.
Right, but
But-
we need a set amount that,
I don't know that that's possible.
I have a question. Ron, if we transfer it, the option of continuing to use it once a year to keep it as it is goes away?
That would depend on what we worked out with the school. There may be a possibility there that we could use it, with, some type of school function with, safety training, or we might use it, once at night on weekend for our officers. But we would work that out with the school at that time.
Don't you think that's something that we should have some kind of understanding about in advance? Because if we can go through this process without eliminating that option, we're just that much better off.
I agree, and this gives us 6 months, I believe it is,
It's actually 7.
7 months for, I think our attorney wrote the language so that it's 7 months, we would work out that agreement with the school.
That's correct.
At the end of the day, we don't have to transfer it. We can continue using it as a firing range. We can keep it and use it for something else. If in that 6-month period we can't come to an agreement, we can't work out the details. So there really would be no cost to the town if we decide to keep it and use it as a firing range. There's nothing anywhere that basically mandates that we give this to the school.
So as far as the firing range is concerned, what we're looking for today is no more than an agreement to work on an agreement and see if we can come up with something within the next,
Yep.
6 months or so.
only problem you do have is that this agreement's item 6, even in the new language, we still are, on the hook for
Yeah.
that balance.
Yeah, is this, what we're looking at here, doesn't say that it's like Mr. Cameron says, it says, it looks like we're committing to a greater degree than what I just described.
We're committing to pay for whatever the grant doesn't cover.
Yeah.
Exactly,
I mean, bottom line.
In the event,
And
in the event the title is transferred.
right.
and we have no idea what that cost could be.
And it may be that we don't transfer the property. It's only if there is a transfer that would kick in.
And it's only if there is a transfer that grant funding can be applied for.
Well, one of the good things that's happened with the coming of Brad Burton. Brad Burton has worked on a couple of these brownfield projects and the writing of the grants, and he is right now digging into the details of this. He's documenting everything that needs to be done. So over the next 6 or 7 months, we'll have a much clearer idea of how to proceed, how we can give support if we want to go down that road, and much clearer than we've ever been before. But we've got time to work through those issues.
But working through the issues does not hold us up from giving the permanent CO.
No.
Okay.
If I read the suggested motion here correctly, it's only approving the improvements to the agreement and the 10-year master site plan and the final certificate of occupancy. How does that connect with this?
With this, well, the motion, the suggested motion, you would approve those 3 documents, the CO, the resolution, and then the improvements agreement. The improvements agreement is referenced and really kind of made part of the resolution by reference.
Okay.
So that's all you're approving. You're not approving a transfer of property today. But what we are agreeing to is some sort of framework that we can move forward on over the next 6 months. That's all we're doing. So there's no final agreement on the firing range. It gives us time to work through those details and let out. Now, we'll be coming back to you probably your first meeting in August with the details worked out on this and some water issues and some sewer issues, possibly even a maintenance agreement for the driveway. There may be a couple of other things, but with this agreement, we're agreeing to a framework, and we'll be working through that over the next 6, 7 months. and
Okay,
bring
well, I'll
that
just
back to
ask our town attorney, that's your understanding of
That's correct.
what we're doing? Okay. Good.
There's no commitment at this point. It's sort of hitting the pause button on the firing range.
Okay. And while we're going through them, how about item 1 about relocation of town wells, placement of the fuel storage tank? What's this well relocation issue?
When we did the master plan, or the general development plan, which was really a land allocation model, what uses are going out there, how much land do they need? We realized that if we were to relocate the town wells, we can make better use of our property. We weren't looking at packing a lot of uses on this site when we located the storage tank and those wells in preparation for Ingalls. And so, doing the study, we realized if we were to move those wells, we all of a sudden can free up developable property on the Island Creek side. And so as we move those, we want to make sure the school doesn't locate a fuel tank in a location that basically would disqualify us from locating those wells where we need to so that we can better use the town's property. And so this basically says, they basically agree to that.
Okay, but what's,
Does it commit them to agree to that? Because this probably won't come up until probably most of us aren't here anymore. But at some point down the road, when a well needs to be relocated, does the town have any leverage if there's a school board in place at that time that does not want to work with the town in that regard?
I think I would defer to Mr. Moore.
I think you would always have some leverage because you can revisit the master plan from time to time, or other approvals that they would need. The language in this document is worded in general terms on purpose, and we can make that language a little bit stronger, requiring it if and when the town desires to relocate. That they agree now to let us do that, or to not put their potential fuel tank or something that has to be so far away from the wells. Is that right?
Right.
Well, who's paying for this relocation if it had to occur? Town?
It would be the town project. It would be accomplished because we wanted it to be accomplished.
Okay.
And we wouldn't want the school to do something that would keep us from using that property and for highest and best use.
Yeah.
We sell it, put some other use on it. We just want to make sure the location of those tanks don't
The main
disqualify.
reason we would want to do it is if we wanted to use where the wells are now
Yes,
for
yes,
something
yes.
else, and that would be something that the town
That's right.
would instigate.
That's
right.
correct. And there is a state regulation that concerns that 500, 100 for certain types of tanks, 500 for certain types of tanks. And what we wanted to make sure is that their fuel storage tank wasn't within that 500 feet. That would prevent us from doing that.
good, thank you.
And that could be something that perhaps we could work on over the next 6 or 7 months. We maybe could develop a formal agreement around that issue.
If we go to approve this agreement today, in line 5, we need to change town's wear tank to town's water tank.
Right.
Also, item 8, the third line, there's a LLCA dot, I don't know what was happening there. It's just a couple minor changes as we sign it.
Okay.
It's the third line of item number 8. See where it says has been an issue,
Yes.
LLCA dot, and then it goes on.
I think it's just an
What you
extra
call that in
LLC.
English, but it's not the right.
You can make those adjustments.
But we can make those adjustments before we sign it.
That's all I had. Those are just two of my concerns.
I think the big picture is we're trying to take out a lot of the detail that we're gonna have to get in there and figure this thing out, buy us time over the next 6 months, get all that squared away and bring it back to you. That way it doesn't hold them up, but allows us to get into the detail. And honestly, these are some of the details I think as Mr. Ellis pointed out, Vice Chair of the Planning Board, we probably should have had resolved already. And we've been in a mad rush to get all this done. This buys us that 6 months to focus on the details that we should have already worked through and had resolved. So this will be helpful to us.
With,
Well, I think, go ahead, Mr. Weber.
with regard to the the well situation as well as the firing range. I know Mr. Ellis and the planning board had their meeting and the DRC had their meeting, but was the asset management board brought into any of that discussion, since their charter is to advise us on the highest and best use of town assets?
None other than just having members of that board on the planning board, which would be Mr. McKay and Mr. Ellis, and I think Mr. Hinkle is on that board as well. So I think
And
the school.
if I'm hearing correctly, we're trying to protect both the town and the schools' use of contiguous land for our short-term needs, but without creating a problem for the future.
That's it.
And we just need some time to work on the details, but we don't want to hold up the school. We support what the school needs. We want the school to be successful. We want them to be able to move forward and get their certificate of occupancy.
Any other concerns or questions from council? Now, I guess there'd be a time for the school to respond. Is this, satisfying your particular needs, or I know we had some alternate language that went back and forth, but we do have time now, the 6 months, to resolve those type of things. So if you care, Tom or Eric?
Well, I didn't read that exactly, that we have the 6 months or so to resolve the other issues. The 7 months was programmed into the firing range planning and studying and
That's what I meant.
and so on, but not on anything else. I noticed coming out of the resolution, one thing coming out was the public access road, which is now a separate item under number 5, where the LLCA is going to be totally responsible for the maintenance of the public access road from Island Creek to the property. I don't know if that's a change from the original. It doesn't indicate it that way. It just says it's coming out of the one document and going into this one. So, is there any issue with that? Any heartburn with that, with the LLCA or the town from the public works aspect of them having the maintenance requirement for that road? And then, on top of that, with the LLCA having the maintenance requirement for that road, is there any issue or with regard to LLCA meeting the required standards for the continued maintenance of that road?
None from LLCA's point of view on that. We're actually seeking some state money to assist us with improving the paving coming in. I mean, it's in our best interest to make sure that that drive is well maintained and cooperating with the town on all town rules and regs. So.
Looking at number 3, are there issues regarding easement locations on the sewer? It says all issues regarding easement locations. Do we know of some already? And are there issues there, and how significant are they?
Well, I'll defer to Eric on that one.
Maybe I better come up with Thomas John, give the first presentation up here. What you're reading through in your, I believe that's called resolutions, is that correct?
No, this is the improvement agreement
Okay,
between the two.
These were things developed from meeting with your public works, the directors of many of the different departments that you have with the town. And in my review with them also, we found that there were some things that were expected to have been in place that just frankly are not. So everyone thought that we had an agreement that that we had a legal document that said the school will take care of the entry. Can't seem to find that document. I think it was assumed, but assuming isn't how the world works today. And so the recommendation is we need to get a document together, which I think we've already worked on some. We'll have it finalized by a certain time. What you're doing to vote on it is to say town staff will be able to make the decision that it has been satisfied, or town staff, if they don't feel that they can handle that decision, will bring it back to you at a later meeting. It's some of the things that came along the way while trying to create a master plan to try to remove the burden of town council having to meet. For instance, if we put one storage container in, it takes about 20 minutes, and you would have 3 months of meetings that everyone would have to go through to accomplish that. So this was trying to give you the ability to vote on releasing staff to review. If staff ever has a problem, they will bring it back through DRC, ZNP, and town council. That's kind of their mandate. As far as any problems found, we found no problems with the sewer. We found no problems with the water. The only issue is there documentation and an easement actually written out saying who owns this piece of the pipe? For now, everyone realizes that when we have water brought to your home, that the town owns it to a particular joint in that meter. There's an absolute spot. If it's leaking on this side of a nut, it's the town's responsibility. If it's leaking on that side, the owner has to pay for any of the costs associated with that repair. It's very simple. Well, we realized that those documents were not clearly stated. And I think that there were some emails that the easement that was given for the water, it was assuming that the town already owned the 6-inch line going all the way to the meter, but it never actually conveyed it. It was never actually conveyed. It wasn't actually formally made a part of the town system. And so, again, rather than assume, the town and the school are working on drawing up that agreement. Again, that will be finalized by, I think it was August 2017.
Right.
Yep. So, as far as issues, no, most of the issues were just, everybody got, the engineers, everybody signed off on everything. Everything is good and working and operational and in place. But there's some detailed legal jargon that just never got completed, I think is what it is. And they assumed it. And that's what we don't want to have in the future. If for some reason in 20 years from now there's a problem with some part of the sewer line, everyone needs to know who owns that part and who's repairing it, who needs to be tasked and ready to repair it, and so forth. So that's kind of what we're working on right now.
And according to this, the school will be coming to, I guess, council meetings and giving us an update or
Yes,
on the progress.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, working with Shannon, that we definitely want to ensure that we're communicating in a timely fashion and that we're not rushing things and that we're bringing things to the proper zoning and planning, DRCs. So you guys are not asked to make any kind of hasty decision, which I think maybe has been in the past. Those days are over.
Like today,
I sure hope so.
like today.
Not today.
Okay. Because we had this conversation once before about 911 emergency
Right.
decisions, and here we are again a second time.
Well, in regards to, I do have to say, the zoning and planning and the DRC, we work very well with that group to address the concerns that the town has and the concerns that the school has. And, some things did come up along the way. And I appreciate the language that has been asserted that as far as the agreement goes, that we have the 7 months to iron out some of the details. Our most urgent thing is the permanent certificate of occupancy and the 10-year master plan as we engage in working with the USD that gymnatorium.
To speak to the emergency convening of a meeting, we started this process many, many months ago. Some of the drawings that you see in your packet are my personal drawings that I did for the school very long time ago. This is something that we've been planning on doing, and we were actually planning on doing it along whatever the timelines were. We were fine to go through to March, April, whatever we need to do here to get all the way through the plannings. Some interesting governmental financing came available not that long ago, is why you're asked to convene on the 31st. The other meetings were scheduled as they normally would have been. But that was a unique opportunity that is coming along that would be a tragedy for the school to miss, and for the town to miss, I think.
Right, town staff and these other groups are the ones I'm concerned about. It's just,
Yeah,
I know they,
normal times, yeah.
and they've had to drop some things to make sure they got it done. But I just, like I said, just want to make sure it's not a continuing saga that,
No, this was just this last, I think it was a month or two that this has really come. Yeah.
Month and a half, I think.
Yeah, so otherwise everyone was just moving at whatever pace it normally needed to be. But yes, Shannon definitely stepped up, on his side for sure. We tried to do the best we could.
And the primary reason for wanting to have this done by the 31st of this month is that the deadlines that USDA have given us are February. It's a very tight schedule to work with that.
What has to occur then?
Sir?
What has to occur by February or in
Well,
February?
the permanent certificate of occupancy is the primary item that we had to deal with. And in securing the permanent CO, attending to the other issues that were concerned.
And there were only two things that held that up,
Yeah,
correct?
Portico
The-
and the firing range.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're seeing the master plan here because we've been working on that for months as a part of resolving all of the issues along,
Right.
we thought was going to be a much broader timeline, and so that we wouldn't take up staff for every item, but yet to have everything go through at once, so that everyone only had to
Yeah.
go through everything one time,
Right.
DRC, ZMP, and of course,
And for the mayor, I see now what you meant about all this other stuff with 6 months. I see in paragraph 2, 3, 4, they talk about an August 1 deadline, so that's 6 months. The only one with the 7 months would be the firing range, which was rewritten, unless the intent was to change all the others to 7 months too.
There's no specific reason why that's the 31st, except when I was hastily making the last changes to that paragraph 6. I typed in 31 instead of 1, But
Well,
I think Shannon's just.
Several have an August 1 and then that one has an August 31. What should it be?
It doesn't matter
doesn't
really.
really matter.
Probably more
Okay.
time is better on that one.
Because the August 1 is the deadline by which, between the town and the school, accomplish all these things and find out everything that's needed and reach all the agreements or determine what's needed in the way of other agreements.
If the board would like to go August 1, that would be fine, keep it consistent. I think that is what was intended.
Well, I'm fine with the August 31 if they need the extra time. I mean, I'm fine with that.
I think so. I think that August 1 is plenty of time. You're more familiar, this is something that time-wise is really so that an attorney has time to really put together the verbiage. This is not something that you necessarily want to put together in a week.
Well, for consistency, we can change it to the 1st.
Okay.
That way we will have one date in our head,
Right. So August 31 in paragraph 6 will become August 1. Yeah, I agree in the consistency. I mean, unless there's a reason not to be.
Well, it was said longer is better.
So,
Is being consistent with the 31st better?
well, that's what I said. I'm fine with the 31st, whatever you feel you need. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
I think, I'll defer to Mr. Morgan. Surveys would need to establish easements for sewer lines and so forth.
Correct.
That does need to be actively physically surveyed, correct?
Yes.
And to then be logged in. The verbiage shouldn't take more than a month or so, correct?
The actual easement document will not take long at all. once I have the description.
I'll tell you what,
I,
let me make that decision for you.
31st.
Make all the deadlines August 31st. My recommendation.
okay, if it's,
So-
the
I
council's
concur.
comfortable with that, the school's comfortable, we're not worried one way or the other. I do have a large foot to step on the surveyor. Usually, him up a little bit.
Give
We'll make
yourself a
everything-
little more time so we don't have to rush again. So,
Yep. Is there any more questions on the items that Mr. Weber had brought up?
No, we're
I
good.
have a couple just to bring to anyone's attention. Is so, as you enter the school here through town property and through the firing range, there's a spot right there where the driveway turns left and turns right. So you see that we placed an LLCA SG1, which is not Stargate. It's just a regular steel gate. Nothing fancy. It's something that the police chief had asked for security, so that when someone's playing around back here and they get a call where they see it on video, they need to go all the way in there and they need to tell people, why are you here? You need to move on. There's no school right now. There's nobody on campus. You don't need to be here. Weekends and so nights, so forth. So the gate was an idea of bringing it to your attention in particular. I know that you've probably all read through the packet, and thank you for doing that. The reason I bring it up is it is on town property. And the reason it's on town property, as far as we can tell, is that if you put it on school property, it would have to be on two different roads. It'd have to be two gates to unlock. Two keys, so forth, so on. In the school's opinion, we are not concerned as to whether or not it's on school or town property, but near an area that's well inside the entry so that cars can pull in and get a gate open in case people are right behind the and of course, expense of not having so many gates. It's a prime location. This is not a gate that would preclude anyone at the school or anyone for the town from entering. This is, or the police. This is something that is openable to any official. Official entrance only. Official entrance only is any town worker, police, EMS, school faculty, and so forth. It's just somebody that just wants to turn and go and drive all the way around the school. You're not really supposed to do that, so it's a deterrent. And so I just wanted to bring that to your attention if anyone had an issue with that being on town property. I think Shannon suggested that he would then have a lock put on there by the town and they would give us a key. Otherwise, they had brought up, these are the circles for the wells that exist. This is your water tower here. Of course, everything is on town property. What we did is we took your general development plan. We plugged in those two new well locations as part of that plan and did 500-foot circles off of everything. Now, understand that the school's actual documentation they're trying to submit for the master plan is an above-ground tank, storage tank for diesel, to try to cut costs on filling the school buses. This is not a below-ground gas station type issue. It's much like the one that we have at the town marina. It's well on property. It's above ground. It's something that's easier to regulate. I believe the distance was really 100. Since there is a 500 for fuel, facilities committee, public works, everyone felt, why don't we just impose the 500-foot rule? And that way, in the future, as the town tries to use its property, or let's say the school tries to use its property, we don't have an issue where, because if regulations were to change from 100 to 500, let's already have that buffer in there. We'll have that, if that item comes online, it's in your documentation that staff would verify with survey on the school's expense to make sure that that storage unit was 500 feet from any future locations. Issues like that. So any other questions, feel free to ask.
Nope, we're good. Thank you.
And I really do want to make sure I acknowledge Shannon, Mr. Nally, and the mayor, and the zoning and planning and DRC. I'm very impressed with the professionals in those committees. Their advice was excellent, and we tried to follow it the best we could. So yeah, just reiterate, we are trying our best to operate in good faith on the school, and we are going to continue to try to do better with our communications, and so that there are no surprises.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Eric. Any other questions or comments? If not, could I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion. I make a motion that resolution number 17-01-31 be approved with an amendment to the improvements agreement that is referenced therein. And the amendment to that improvement agreement be that any reference to August 1 be changed to August 31, 2017. I also further move that we approve the final certificate of occupancy for improvements already made to date on the campus of the Lake Lure Classical Academy, doing business as LLCA-CFA, which is located at 1058 Island Creek Road, Lake Lure, North Carolina.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion made by Stephen, second by John. Did you, I have one question. Stephen, there's one little part in there about the 10-year master plan. Did you reference that when you talked about the resolution and changing?
To improve the improvements agreement resolution, I further move that we approve the LLCA-CFA 10-year master site plan.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, second by John. Any further discussion?
Yes, for clarification, the improvements agreement I'm talking about is the one that had been modified and handed to us during the meeting and not the one in the packet.
Exactly. Okay. With that as the stipulation, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, it's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Keever. Eric, appreciate you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Ball.
All right, item number 7. Do I have a motion to move into closed session in accordance with GS 143-318-11, A3 for attorney-client privilege?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Bob,
Second.
second by Stephen. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. And with that, move into closed session.